What's up YouTube? Conzilla here. This is day 3 of 31 Days of Horror, where I will be reviewing a different horror movie every day for the entire month of October. Tonight's screening is none other than Nosferatu the Vampyre. This is the 1979 remake of the classic horror film Nosferatu. This is directed by Werner Herzog. It stars Klaus Kinski as the titular vampire, Bruno Ganz as Jonathan Harker, and Isabelle Adjani as Lucy. This is a film I've seen many times before. I watched this movie a ton growing up when I was first getting into the horror genre, mainly because it was a PG-rated horror movie. So it was one of the only ones I could get my hands on when I was about 10, first getting into horror movies. Used to see this movie all the time at the video rental store. Always had the really great box art here, which was always really eye-catching. So always one I really wanted to check out. When I finally did watch it, as a kid, I think I had a mixed reaction to it because there were certainly a lot of great visuals to it and all of that, but it is a slow burn, and so I don't know that I quite had the patience for it as a kid. Rewatching it now as an adult, I thought it was a really good film for the type of horror film that it is. Quick plot recap here. Spoilers alert, although most people are probably familiar with the story of Dracula by now. But the story opens up in Wismar, Germany. Jonathan Harker is sent on a quest to through the Carpathian Mountains to Transylvania to bring a real estate contract to Count Dracula, who is looking to relocate to Wismar. Of course, once he gets to Castle Dracula, he finds that this is no ordinary count. He is a vampire. And while they're having dinner, Jonathan cuts his thumb with a bread knife, and that, of course, awakens the vampiric hunger in Count Dracula, who just can't help himself. He has to feast on Jonathan's blood. And then Jonathan is trapped in this castle. Dracula loads up a bunch of rats and Transylvanian soil into a series of coffins, which he then has shipped to Wismar, bringing with him the plague, which then takes over the entire town. We sort of switch to Lucy as the main protagonist by this point, who is the only one who really realizes what is going on, why the plague has been brought to their town, and why everyone is dying. And she realizes that she has to sacrifice herself to Dracula so that he will be distracted throughout the night and the sun can rise, thus bringing his untimely end. So that's the basic story there. This, like I said, this is a slow burn of a movie. It's very slow moving. A lot of the first 30 minutes or so is really just focused on Jonathan traveling through the countryside. It's very pastoral. The cinematography is really nice, but there's not a lot of dialogue. There's not a lot happening. Once we do get to Dracula's castle, we have some really great sort of haunting scenes of Dracula in the shadows, really great lighting, wolves howling in the background. There's a super spooky like skull clock that goes off. But this movie is more haunting than it is horrifying. Like I said, it's PG. It's not very violent. There's very little blood on screen. It's more about mood and atmosphere and sort of making the viewer feel a bit unnerved. It's not fast-paced. There's not tons of blood or anything like that. So if you're going to watch this movie, I think modern horror viewers just need to know what they're in for with this. I do definitely recommend it. It's a really well done film. Obviously, Werner Herzog is a really well-known director, and the presentation of the film is really great. The cinematography is awesome. A lot of the scenes in this movie, if you've seen the original Nosferatu, are pretty much straight recreations of that, although I will say I do think this movie differs from the original in quite a few ways. As far as the performances go, they're pretty good. I was watching the English version tonight, and it's been a while since I've seen the German version of it. I think the German performances are supposed to fare a little bit better because, you know, the actors are speaking in their native tongue there, whereas in the English version, some of the delivery feels a little bit stilted. I don't know if that's intentional or not. It definitely sort of fits the feeling of the film, but at the same time, like, you can tell these are not native English speakers. They have accents throughout the film that kind of come through in their line delivery. Obviously, Klaus Kinski is the sort of the real draw here. He does an amazing job as Count Dracula. The whole appearance that they have him in, the bald and the bat ears and the rat fangs. He has super long claws, and his performance here is just really great. The sort of vampire that he plays in this movie is more like a somber take on Dracula. He's definitely not the sort of charming or sexy version of Dracula that maybe we're more used to here in the US. He laments that he can't die, that he can't partake in love. So it's very much a dreary gothic interpretation of the Dracula story. And the plague elements that they bring into the story that I think are a bit more particular to the Nosferatu versions of Dracula. I've always found that element just really haunting. I have an interest in plague times, and especially now in the era of pandemic, it feels a bit more noteworthy, I suppose. When you have all the rats running around the town, the dance macabre scene in the film is really interesting. You have basically, at a certain point, we see all these coffins being brought out through town by pallbearers, and you know that basically everyone has died with Dracula's arrival into Wismar, and there's a celebration. The townspeople who are still alive, they've just accepted that they're going to die of the plague, and they're just trying to enjoy what little time they have. And so they're having a banquet at one point, and there's just rats scurrying around their feet, which is just a really interesting scene. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Lucy is getting ready for bed and sort of looking at herself in the mirror, when her door just opens and no one's there opening the door. You just see Nosferatu's shadow enter the room, and then he sort of comes out of view from the camera and enters the room, and it's a really effective shot. Because it definitely seems like, he's a vampire. He has no reflection. He's entered the room, but you don't see him through the mirror, and then he's just there. So that's pretty unnerving stuff right there. And then, of course, the final scene where Lucy sacrifices herself and Nosferatu is feeding on her. Really well done. The way that they frame that shot looks really great. And yeah, visually, this film is really great. And the music in the film is really done well, too. It's very gothic, sort of ominous music. There's a lot of choral, hymn type pieces in here. So the music really pairs well with the film in creating sort of this haunting atmosphere. And the other thing that's really great about this movie is how well it's done as a period piece, because it does take place, I believe, in the 1850s. In Germany, and I believe they filmed the movie in Amsterdam, and so wherever they were filming it, the locales were perfect, because it feels like it's straight out of the 1800s. They do a really great job of recreating that era, and there's nothing in the movie that really gives it away that it's a modern, a 1970s film. So it's really successful in that regard, I would say. So if you're into more slow-moving, sort of haunting, atmospheric horror films, I would definitely recommend this one. If you enjoy vampires, I think this is a really strong vampire film. Just know that you're not in for a bloodbath or anything super fast-moving or anything like that. It is what it is, but it excels at what it's trying to do. So it's definitely a solid film there. If you've seen this before, let me know in the comments what you think of this movie. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you want to see more content in the future, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be doing a review of a horror movie every day for the rest of the month. So lots more reviews coming. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.